The first rays of dawn slipped through the blinds of a modest apartment, splashing gold across a canvas perched on an easel. The paint was clumsy, uneven strokes of blue and green that looked nothing like the still life bowl of apples sitting on the kitchen counter. But Ethan didn't care. He leaned back in his chair, brush still in hand, and squinted at his creation as though it were a masterpiece. Ethan wasn't an artist, not in the sense of galleries or auctions, but he loved how painting made him feel. Free, focused, whole. He hummed softly as he worked, his lips curling into a shy smile. Ethan was 32 years old, had Down syndrome, and lived alone. Some might have called his life simple, but to him, it was a daily fight for dignity, for independence, for the right to carve out a place in a world that had been telling him no since the day he was born. The phone buzzed. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and picked it up. "Don't forget your class tonight," said a voice. His sister, Clara. She was always reminding him. Always worried. "And don't be late this time." "I won't," Ethan said. "I'm ready." Clara sighed on the other end, but her tone softened. "I know you are. Just be careful, okay?" Careful. Ethan hated that word. It carried pity like a shadow. He hung up, set his brush down, and muttered to himself, "I don't need careful. I need a chance." The community art class was buzzing when Ethan arrived that evening. The room smelled of paint, turpentine, and nervous energy. Students filled the rows of easels, chatting in small bursts, their laughter bouncing against the whitewashed walls. Ethan adjusted his backpack and kept his head low, shoulders tight. Crowds made him nervous. "Seat here's open." The voice was warm, like sunlight on skin. Ethan turned and saw her. Lily. Her auburn hair was tied back in a messy bun, a smudge of charcoal on her cheek. She smiled, not the stiff, polite kind, but one that reached her eyes. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Okay." He slid onto the stool beside her, his palms sweating. As the instructor droned on about perspective and composition, Ethan's hands fumbled with his pencils. His lines came out shaky, too dark, too wrong. Frustration welled inside him. He clenched his jaw, ready to snap his sketchpad shut. But then Lily leaned over. "That's a good start," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "It's bad." She tilted her head, studying his work. "No, it's alive. You're not copying, you're feeling. That's better than perfect lines." Ethan stared at her, trying to decide if she was serious. But her smile didn't falter, and something stirred in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Weeks passed, and Ethan found himself looking forward to class. Not for the painting, but for Lily. She treated him as if he were just another person, not someone to pity or tiptoe around. She asked about his day. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. And when she talked about her own dreams, traveling, teaching, creating, her voice carried a fire that drew Ethan closer every time. One night after class, rain hammered the streets. Ethan fumbled with his umbrella, cursing under his breath, when Lily appeared beside him, soaked but radiant. "Bus stop?" she asked. He nodded. They walked together, shoulders bumping. "People ever tell you you're funny?" she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "No." "Well, you are." She grinned. "And brave. Brave. You show up. You keep trying. That's more courage than most people have." The words hit Ethan like lightning. Brave. No one had ever called him that before. He swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. He wanted to tell her everything, that the world doubted him, that he doubted himself, that loneliness was a weight he carried every single day. But instead, he just said, "Thanks." Their friendship bloomed into something deeper. Dinners at small diners, long walks where Lily would tease him about his slow pace, and endless conversations that stretched into midnight. Ethan felt like he was living in color for the first time. One evening, Lily placed her hand over his. "Ethan," she said softly, "you know I care about you, right?" His heart pounded. "Me? Why?" "Because you see me. Not what people think I should be, not what I pretend to be. You just see me." Tears burned his eyes. No one had ever said that to him. Not like that. In that moment, Ethan realized he wasn't just a man with a disability. He was a man who could love and be loved. The wedding was small, but alive with joy. White folding chairs lined a garden, and fairy lights twinkled above as the sun dipped below the horizon. Ethan wore a suit that felt too big for him, but Lily said he looked like a movie star. When she walked down the aisle, Ethan's breath caught. He'd painted her 100 times in his mind, but nothing compared to this moment. "You may kiss the bride," the minister said. Ethan leaned in, hands trembling, lips meeting hers in a kiss that sealed a promise. To love, to cherish, to fight for their future no matter the odds. The guests cheered. Ethan's sister cried. And for once, the world felt right. Their tiny apartment became a canvas for their life together. Laughter echoed against peeling wallpaper. They cooked meals that ended in burnt pans and takeout boxes. And when Lily told him she was pregnant, Ethan fell to his knees, clutching her hands as tears of joy streamed down his face. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." "Yes," she said, smiling through her own tears. "Our baby." Ethan painted the nursery walls a soft blue, filling it with stars and clouds. At night, he would press his lips against Lily's belly and whisper, "I'll be a good dad. I promise." For the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't just surviving. He was building something. Something sacred. Something whole. But shadows loomed at the edges of their joy. At doctor's appointments, Ethan caught the wary looks, the subtle questions aimed at Lily instead of him. Friends muttered doubts when they thought he wasn't listening. Can Ethan really handle a child? What happens when he's alone with the baby? The whispers stung, but Lily silenced them with a firm hand in his. "You'll be a wonderful father," she told him. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Ethan believed her. He had to. And as the due date drew near, he painted one last canvas. A family of 3, standing beneath a sky of blazing colors. Hope bled from every stroke. The night labor began. The world changed. Sirens of an ambulance split the silence. Nurses rushed. Doctors barked orders. Ethan stood frozen in the hospital hallway, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Mr. Hayes, you need to wait here," a nurse said, guiding him back. "No, I need to be with her." His voice cracked with desperation. The door slammed shut. Ethan pressed his palms against the cold glass, his reflection staring back at him, scared, helpless, but clinging to hope. And then, through the muffled chaos, he heard it, the thin, sharp cry of his newborn son. Relief crashed over him, until a doctor stepped out, his face grave. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry. Your wife didn't make it." The world shattered. The joy of new life collided with the agony of loss. Ethan crumpled against the wall, sobbing, as the sounds of his baby's cries echoed like a fragile beacon of hope in the wreckage of his heart. The world should have celebrated. A new baby, a new life. But Ethan's hospital room smelled not of joy, but of antiseptic and silence. Noah lay in the bassinet, tiny fists flailing, pink cheeks flushed with the fury of a newborn. His cry was sharp, insistent, life's raw demand. Beside him, Ethan sat slumped in a chair, his body trembling. His eyes were swollen from hours of weeping. The words replayed again and again in his mind, tearing into him with merciless precision. "I'm so sorry. Your wife didn't make it." No matter how many times he blinked, he couldn't erase the image of Lily's smile, the warmth of her hand in his, the sound of her voice promising him he'd be a good father. She was gone, and yet, here lay the proof of their love. Noah. A nurse walked in, carrying paperwork. Her face was kind, but her voice was careful. "Mr. Hayes, you'll need to sign these discharge forms for your son." Ethan stared blankly at the papers. His hand shook as he took the pen. "Me? Alone?" The question burned in his skull. But then, Noah's cry pierced the silence, and Ethan forced himself to scrawl his name. He stood, reached into the bassinet, and cradled his son to his chest. "I got you," Ethan whispered, voice breaking. "I'll always got you." The first weeks were a storm. Ethan barely slept. Noah wailed through the night, his tiny lungs unrelenting. Bottles slipped from Ethan's hands. Diapers came undone. Once, in a panic, he called his sister Clara at 3 in the morning. I can't do it, he sobbed into the phone. He won't stop crying, and I don't know what he needs. Clara arrived minutes later, guiding him through the chaos with practice calm. She showed him how to warm the bottle properly, how to hold Noah against his chest to soothe him. You're learning, she said gently. That's all any parent does, learn. But Clara wasn't always there. Most nights, Ethan was alone, rocking Noah in the dark, whispering stories about Lily, about how much she loved him already. The exhaustion was brutal, but worse were the whispers. At the grocery store, a cashier frowned as Ethan juggled Noah's carrier and bags. You sure you're managing okay? She asked, voice tinged with doubt. At the park, two mothers exchanged glances as they watched Ethan struggle to fasten a stroller strap. Poor kid, one muttered under her breath. And then came the neighbor. Mrs. Dempsey, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, lived across the hall. She often saw Ethan pacing the hall at night, with Noah screaming in his arms. One afternoon, as Ethan fumbled with his keys, she confronted him. Ethan, this isn't right, she said. You can't raise a child by yourself. You have limitations. That baby needs someone capable. Her words were knives. Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing out, He's my son. I could take care of him. But Mrs. Dempsey only shook her head, her lips pressed tight. We'll see. It happened 2 weeks later. Ethan answered a knock at the door to find two strangers standing there, clipboards in hand, badges pinned to their shirts. Mr. Hayes, we're from Child Welfare Services. We've received a report concerning your ability to care for your son. The words landed like a sledgehammer. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. Report? What do you mean? One of the agents, a tall man with glasses, spoke calmly. We've had concerns raised about your capacity to provide adequate care. We'll need to conduct an assessment. Noah's fine, Ethan shouted, clutching his baby to his chest. He's healthy. He's safe with me. But the agents stepped inside, eyes scanning the apartment. They scribbled notes, dishes piled in the sink, laundry spilling from a basket, bottles stacked on the counter. To Ethan, it was survival. To them, it was evidence. The following days were a gauntlet. The agents returned, observing Ethan as he fed Noah, bathed him, changed him. They asked probing questions, their words clipped and cold. What if the child gets sick? Do you know what to do? How do you plan to provide for him, financially long-term? Do you have reliable support? Each question chipped away at Ethan's confidence. He stumbled over his answers, tears threatening. The fear that they might take Noah grew like a tumor in his chest. One night, after they left, Ethan sat on the floor of the nursery, holding Noah tight. The baby gurgled, tiny fingers gripping his father's shirt. I can't lose you too, Ethan whispered, rocking back and forth. I'll fight anyone who tries. The next inspection came on a Saturday morning. Ethan had spent the entire night preparing. The apartment was spotless, floors mopped, dishes washed, toys neatly arranged. Bottles were lined in perfect order on the counter. When the agents arrived, Ethan stood tall, Noah in his arms. Breakfast time, he said, his voice steady. He demonstrated warming the bottle to the exact temperature, testing it on his wrist before feeding Noah. He burped him gently, humming a lullaby Lily used to sing. He led them into the nursery, where the walls glowed with the mural he had painted. Stars, clouds, and a family of 3, holding hands beneath a bright sun. This is his room, Ethan said, his throat tight. I painted it for him. For us. The agents exchanged glances. Noah cooed, nestled safely in Ethan's arms. In that moment, the truth was undeniable. This child was loved profoundly and fiercely. A week later, Ethan received the letter. His hand shook as he opened it, scanning the words through blurred vision. Based on our assessment, custody of Noah Hayes will remain with his father, Ethan Hayes. No further action required. Ethan dropped the letter, clutching Noah to his chest as tears of relief poured down his face. You're mine, he whispered. They can't take you away. Not ever. The victory was hard-won, but it ignited something in Ethan. No longer would he let the world's doubts define him. He enrolled in parenting classes, He took on extra hours at the grocery store, saving every penny for Noah's future. He called Clara when he needed help, no longer ashamed to ask. Every day, he looked at his son and saw not just responsibility, but destiny. "You're going to do great things," Ethan whispered one night, kissing Noah's forehead. "And I'll be right here, every step of the way." Outside, the city lights flickered like stars, indifferent to the struggles of a single father in a small apartment. But inside, a fire burned brighter than ever. The fire of a man who refused to surrender, who had already faced the worst loss imaginable and would stop at nothing to give his son the life he deserved. Ethan had survived tragedy. Now he was prepared for the long fight ahead. The world didn't change overnight, but Ethan did. The day the letter from child welfare came, granting him full custody of Noah, something inside him shifted. For the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel like he was living under other people's expectations. He had stared down the system, and he had won, not just for himself, but for his son. But victory was only the beginning. Raising Noah wasn't a storybook. It was war, one waged with spit-up, homework, late bills, and sleepless nights. Ethan worked long shifts at the grocery store, often coming home exhausted, his feet aching, his hands raw from stocking shelves. But the moment he opened the door and heard Noah's laugh, it was worth it. Noah grew fast. 1 year blurred into 2, then 5. The little boy toddled around the apartment, bumping into furniture, calling for his dad. Ethan was there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story. At school meetings, Ethan sat proudly in the front row. Teachers eyed him with skepticism at first, his slow speech, the way he needed time to process their words. But their doubt faded when they saw Noah thriving. "Your son's a bright one, Mr. Hayes," Noah's first-grade teacher said, her surprise barely hidden. "He's curious, determined. You must work with him at home." Ethan smiled, his chest swelling. Every night. And he did. Even when his eyes burned with fatigue, Ethan sat beside Noah at the kitchen table, sounding out words, tracing letters, cheering him on. Still, the world never stopped testing him. One afternoon, at a parent-teacher conference, Ethan overheard two fathers whispering in the hallway. "That's the Hayes kid's dad. He's, Down syndrome." "Yeah." Surprised the kid's not behind. "Poor boy. No chance with a father like that." The words sliced into Ethan like glass. That night, he sat on the balcony after Noah was asleep, his face buried in his hands. The doubts clawed back into his mind. Am I enough? Am I hurting him by being his dad? But then Noah's small voice drifted from the bedroom. "Dad, can you sing the Star Song?" Ethan wiped his tears, stood, and walked back inside. He sat on the edge of the bed, singing softly, his voice cracking but steady enough. Noah smiled, eyes fluttering shut. And in that moment, Ethan knew the truth. Love was more powerful than any doubt. By middle school, Noah's brilliance was undeniable. He devoured science books, building model skeletons, conducting experiments in the kitchen with vinegar and baking soda until the apartment smelled like chemicals. "Dad," he said one evening, eyes wide with excitement, "I want to be a doctor. I want to help people, like the ones who helped Mom." The words hit Ethan like a lightning bolt. His throat tightened. For years, he'd told Noah stories of Lily, her warmth, her laughter, how brave she had been. Now, here was their son, carrying her spirit forward. Ethan nodded slowly. "Then you will be, and I'll help you get there." Dreams didn't come cheap. High school brought endless expenses, textbooks, lab equipment, summer programs. Ethan picked up double shifts, his body wearing down under the strain. His coworkers noticed the limp in his step, the way his hands shook as he bagged groceries. "You should slow down," the manager warned. But Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. My boy needs this." At night, when Noah saw the exhaustion etched into his father's face, he protested. "Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Ethan interrupted, his voice firm but tender. "I promised your mom. I promised you. I'll never stop." Noah's eyes welled with tears. "Then I'll never stop either." Their bond was tested hardest when Noah faced his first real failure. Sophomore year, He applied for a prestigious science program and was rejected. He came home furious, slamming his backpack against the wall. They said no. They don't think I'm good enough. Noah shouted. Ethan sat quietly, letting the storm pass. Finally, he said, when I was your age, people told me I couldn't do anything, couldn't live on my own, couldn't be a dad. They were wrong. And the only reason I proved them wrong was because I didn't quit. Noah glared, his eyes searching his father's face. You're not defined by what people say no to. Ethan continued. You're defined by what you keep fighting for. So, what do you want to do? Noah's fists unclenched, his shoulders lowered, and then, slowly, determination flickered back into his eyes. I want to try again. That's my boy, Ethan said, pulling him into a hug. From then on, father and son became a team forged in fire. They studied together late into the night, Noah poring over anatomy charts while Ethan quizzed him with flashcards. When Noah aced his next exam, he ran home waving the paper in the air. Dad, I got a 98. Ethan whooped so loudly the neighbors banged on the wall. That's my son, he shouted, lifting Noah into the air like he was still 5 years old. Every success, no matter how small, was celebrated like a victory parade. By the time Noah graduated high school, he wasn't just smart, he was unstoppable. He earned scholarships, glowing recommendations, a ticket to medical school. At the ceremony, Ethan sat in the front row, his suit a little too big, his tie crooked. When Noah walked across the stage, diploma in hand, he looked out at the crowd. His eyes found his father's. And in that moment, Ethan didn't just see his son. He saw proof. Proof that love could build empires. Proof that devotion could defy every odd. Proof that he had kept his promise to Lily. But the world didn't see Ethan's sacrifices. They saw only Noah's brilliance. Articles praised the young prodigy. Professors marveled at his work ethic. When asked about his inspiration, Noah gave the same answer every time. My father, he said simply. He raised me alone. He taught me never to quit. Everything I am, I owe to him. And those who had once whispered doubts about Ethan, now whispered in awe. Late one evening, during Noah's first semester of medical school, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mural he'd painted years ago in the nursery. The paint had faded, but the image still shone, a family of 3 beneath a blazing sun. Ethan touched the wall with trembling fingers. We did it, Lily, he whispered. We really did it. In the next room, Noah studied late into the night, his lamp burning bright. And Ethan smiled, the fire in his chest burning as fiercely as it had on the day he first held his son. The world had doubted him, but he had raised a warrior. The auditorium thundered with applause. Bright lights blazed across the stage as a procession of young men and women in crisp gowns and tassels moved forward, diplomas in hand. Proud families stood, cheering, crying, clapping. But in the front row, one man sat frozen, his calloused hands gripping the edge of his seat as if it were the only thing tethering him to earth. Ethan Hayes, suit pressed, tie crooked, eyes wet, couldn't believe what he was seeing. His son, his Noah, was walking across the stage to receive his medical degree. The same Noah who had once clung to his shirt as a baby, who had once fallen asleep to his lullabies, who had once said, Dad, I want to be a doctor. And here he was. Ethan's chest heaved. He wanted to shout, to scream his pride so loud the world would never doubt him again. But no sound came. Just tears. Silent, unstoppable tears. The dean handed Noah the microphone. The applause died down, anticipation thick in the air. Noah adjusted the mic, glanced at his classmates, then scanned the crowd. His eyes found his father, trembling but unbreakable, in the front row. Noah took a deep breath. I was asked to say a few words about what brought me here today, he began. His voice was steady, but the emotion beneath, it was undeniable. I could talk about the professors who taught me. I could talk about sleepless nights, about exams, about hard work. But the truth is, none of that is why I stand here. The reason I'm here is because of my father. The audience stirred, curious. Noah's voice grew stronger. My dad has Down syndrome, and when my mom died, giving birth to me, Everyone told him he couldn't raise me alone. They doubted him. They said he wasn't capable. Some even tried to take me away. A murmur rippled through the hall. Ethan bowed his head, tears streaking his cheeks. But he fought for me. Noah continued, his voice breaking. He raised me with love so fierce, it silenced every doubt. He taught me perseverance. He taught me resilience. He taught me what it means to never give up. Not on yourself, not on the people you love. Everything I am, everything I've achieved, I owe to him. Noah turned toward his father, his eyes blazing with pride. Dad, this diploma has my name on it, but it belongs to you. The hall erupted in applause, people rising to their feet. Strangers wept openly. Professors clapped harder than they ever had. And Ethan, overwhelmed, buried his face in his hands. His entire life, people had doubted him. But in that moment, the world saw him for who he truly was, a hero. After the ceremony, Noah found his father outside, away from the crowds. Ethan stood by the garden, staring at the sky painted gold by the setting sun. Noah slipped the diploma into his hands. This is yours. Ethan shook his head, trembling. No, you earned this. No, Noah said firmly, tears in his eyes. We earned this. Together. Ethan clutched the diploma to his chest, sobbing. I kept my promise, Lily, he whispered to the wind. I kept it. Noah wrapped his arms around his father. For a long time, they just held each other. A man and his son, two souls bound by love stronger than blood, stronger than doubt, stronger than loss. News spread quickly. Local papers ran the story of a young surgeon who credited his father with his success. Headlines blazed. Against all odds, a father with Down syndrome raises a doctor. Reporters came knocking, wanting interviews, wanting to hear Ethan's side. But Ethan didn't care about fame. He only wanted to sit at the kitchen table with his son, laughing, eating takeout, talking about the next chapter. Still, Noah insisted on sharing their story. Dad, people need to hear this, he said. They need to know love can break barriers. So Ethan agreed, and the world listened. Years rolled forward. Noah became a surgeon, precise, steady, brilliant. Patients spoke not only of his skill, but of his compassion. He listens, they said. He cares. That was Ethan's influence, etched into every fiber of his son's being. Ethan aged. His steps slowed, his hair thinned, his hands shook more than before. But his pride in his son only grew stronger. Whenever someone asked what his greatest accomplishment was, he smiled, tapped his chest, and said one word, Noah. One night, long after midnight, Noah returned home from a grueling shift. Ethan was at the table, the old mural painting from Noah's nursery resting in his lap. The colors had faded, but the image remained, a family of three beneath a blazing sun. You kept it, Noah whispered. Ethan looked up, tears in his eyes. It's us. Always us. Noah knelt beside him. You gave me everything, Dad. Someday, when I have children, I'll tell them about you. About the bravest man I've ever known. Ethan smiled weakly, his hand trembling as he reached for his son's cheek. I'm not brave. I'm just a dad. Noah shook his head, voice cracking. No, you're my hero. Years later, when Ethan's chair at Noah's graduation banquet sat empty, people spoke of his life in hushed, reverent tones. Not as a man with a syndrome, not as someone defined by limitation, but as a father who had defied the world to raise a son into greatness. And in every operating room where Noah worked, in every patient he saved, in every life he touched, Ethan's legacy lived on. The boy who once clung to his father's arms now held the lives of others in his hands. And every time Noah steadied his breath before surgery, he heard his father's voice echo in his heart. Never give up. Never stop fighting. You're my boy. The flame of Ethan's love would never die. It burned in Noah, in the lives Noah healed, in the story that would inspire generations. The story began with a man painting clumsy strokes on a canvas, uncertain of his worth. It ended with a masterpiece he had created, not with paint, but with love. A masterpiece named Noah.